Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into today's story. This is a tale of a poor student who unexpectedly finds himself in a marriage with a wealthy woman who is almost 3 times his age. But when the wedding day is over, he will discover something that will change his life forever. Stay tuned to see how Mark's life unfolds with his surprising new wife. Will he find more than just financial security? Will he discover love in the most unexpected of places? Keep watching to find out. The next day, Mark found himself standing in front of Brooke's Bistro, the same upscale restaurant where he had met Eleanor the night before. His heart pounded in his chest as he stood outside, staring at the door. He had barely slept, his mind racing with thoughts of what had happened and what might happen next. He still couldn't believe he was about to walk into a business deal disguised as a marriage proposal. But Eleanor had made it clear this was his only chance to escape the debt his father had left him. With a deep breath, he stepped forward, pushing open the door and walking inside. Inside, the bistro felt warmer than the night before. The dim lighting and soft music gave it a welcoming, yet luxurious feel. Mark glanced around, looking for Eleanor. He spotted her at a table near the back. She was seated with a glass of red wine in front of her, her silver hair perfectly styled, her eyes focused on a folder in front of her. As he approached, she looked up, offering him a smile that was calm, yet firm. "Mr. Davis," she said, her voice steady as she gestured for him to sit. "I'm glad you decided to come. Please, take a seat. We need to finalize the details." Mark hesitated for a moment, still feeling out of place in this world of wealth and elegance. He sat down slowly, his hands nervous as they rested on the table. He glanced at the folder in front of her. It looked official, serious, and it made him wonder if this whole situation was truly as simple as it appeared. "I've given this a lot of thought," Mark began, his voice a bit shaky. "I never imagined my life would come to this. But I don't see another way out." His gaze met Eleanor's, and for the first time, he felt a glimmer of hope. "If this is what it takes, I'll do it." Eleanor nodded, her expression unwavering. She reached for the folder, flipping it open to reveal a series of documents. "This is a legally binding contract," she explained calmly. "The terms are simple. We marry. You will take over the management of my assets as my legal husband. In return, I will clear your debts and ensure that you are financially secure for the rest of your life." She paused, looking him over. "We will live as a married couple, but there will be no romantic expectations. Just a business partnership, at least at first." Mark stared at the papers in front of him. The weight of the decision was starting to sink in. Was this really the only way out? He had nothing left to lose, and Eleanor's proposal was a lifeline. But the thought of marrying someone he barely knew, let alone for business purposes, felt surreal. "And what do you expect from me?" he asked, his voice low. Eleanor leaned forward slightly, her eyes meeting his with a sincerity that made him pause. "What I expect, Mr. Davis, is that you fulfill your end of the bargain. You will help me manage my estate, attend public events with me, and provide the kind of companionship I need for this arrangement to work. But there will be no emotional attachment. That's not the point of this contract." She slid the papers towards him. "All you have to do is sign, and everything will be settled." Mark took a deep breath, the weight of her words hanging in the air. He glanced at the papers again, the finality of the decision staring back at him. Could he really go through with this? Could he sign away his future like this, without knowing what it would truly cost him? He thought back to the night before when Eleanor had told him about her loneliness, about her lack of family. She had shared her reasons for wanting this arrangement, and despite the cold business-like terms, he could see the vulnerability beneath her composed exterior. She needed him, just as much as he needed her. Perhaps this wasn't just about money or a contract. Maybe, just maybe, it was the beginning of something else. He took another breath, the pen in his hand trembling slightly. With a steady hand, he signed the papers. There was no turning back now. Eleanor smiled, a faint hint of relief crossing her face. "Thank you, Mr. Davis. You won't regret this," she said, her voice sincere but guarded. "We'll start with the basics. We'll attend events together, meet with the press. I'll introduce you as my husband. But remember, this is still just the beginning." Mark felt a strange sense of finality as he signed the contract. There was no going back now. He was officially bound to Eleanor, for better or for worse. And while the weight of the decision pressed down on him, a part of him couldn't help but wonder what would this partnership turn into. Was it really just a business deal, or was there something deeper waiting to be discovered? As the papers were signed and the deal sealed, Mark felt the first stirrings of something unexpected. Perhaps this arrangement wouldn't be as simple as he thought. Eleanor was a woman of mystery, of power, and he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to her than met the eye. Stay tuned to see how Mark navigates his new life as Eleanor's husband. Will he find more than just financial security in this arrangement? Or will the contract turn out to be more than just a business deal? Keep watching to find out. The following day, Mark found himself sitting in a luxurious car, its leather seats smooth and cool against his skin. The streets of the city passed by in a blur, but in his mind, everything was clear. He had signed the contract, officially agreeing to marry Eleanor Brooks. It had been a decision that felt right in the moment, but now, as he sat beside her in the back seat, reality was setting in. He was about to walk into a world that was so different from his own, and there was no going back. Eleanor sat across from him, looking every bit the part of the powerful woman she was. Her silver hair glistened in the sunlight that filtered through the tinted windows, and she was dressed in an immaculate black suit, her posture poised and confident. She glanced at him briefly before returning to her phone, which was filled with emails and messages. Mark couldn't help but notice how effortless it seemed for her to juggle everything. She was a force to be reckoned with, a woman of strength and conviction, and here he was, a young law student who had barely scraped by for years, now bound to her in a business arrangement that was starting to feel more real with every passing moment. As the car pulled up to a grand building, Mark felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He had never been in a place like this before. The building was towering, a symbol of wealth and power. Eleanor had been telling him about the charity gala they were attending tonight, a high-profile event where she would be honored for her contributions to various causes. She had explained that it was important for them to make an appearance as a married couple, to show the world that they were united in more than just business. When they entered the venue, Mark was immediately struck by the sheer opulence of the place. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, and the floors gleamed with polish. People in designer dresses and tailored suits filled the room, laughing and conversing in hushed tones. Mark felt small, out of place, but Eleanor's presence was like a shield. She walked confidently ahead of him, greeting people with a warmth that made her seem approachable, despite her wealth and status. As they mingled, Eleanor introduced Mark to several prominent individuals in the room, each handshake more formal than the last. Mark did his best to keep up, offering polite smiles and nods, but inside, he felt like an imposter. He could see the curiosity in people's eyes. They were wondering who he was, why he was with Eleanor, and what his role was in this elaborate charade. But he wasn't sure himself. He was here because of a contract, because he had no other choice. He wasn't part of this world. He had no idea how to navigate it. At one point, Mark found himself standing alone by the bar, nursing a glass of water. He felt a sudden wave of loneliness, the kind that crept up when you realized you didn't belong. The voices around him blurred into white noise, and for a brief moment, he thought about walking out. But then he saw Eleanor across the room, talking to a group of women. She looked so comfortable, so in control, and for a split second, Mark wondered if this life, this world of wealth and power, was really something he could become a part of. As the night went on, Eleanor's role as the center of attention became clear. People sought her out for advice, for connections, and Mark watched from the sidelines, unsure of his place in it all. She was respected, admired, and seemingly untouchable. And then there was him, the man who had once been a struggling student, now trying to fit into a life that was nothing like what he had ever known. As the evening wore on, the highlight of the event arrived. Eleanor was called to the stage to receive her award. Mark stood by her side as she made her way up to the podium. The room erupted into applause as she took the microphone, her poise and grace captivating everyone in the room. She spoke of her work with the foundation, her passion for helping others, and her hopes for the future. Mark listened, his admiration for her growing with every word. She was a woman of purpose, of vision, and he couldn't help but feel like he had made the right choice by agreeing to this arrangement. But as he looked at her on the stage, standing tall and confident, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Eleanor than he had realized. What if, beneath all the wealth and success, she was as lonely as he was? The applause died down, and Eleanor returned to Mark's side, her face lit up with a genuine smile. "Thank you for being here with me tonight," she said softly, her hand briefly resting on his arm. Mark nodded, unsure of what to say. "Of course," he replied. "It's my pleasure." But as she smiled at him, Mark couldn't help but wonder if this partnership, this contract, was leading to something neither of them had expected. Could it really remain just business? Or was there a chance that, despite the cold terms, something deeper could grow between them? As the night came to a close, Mark felt a strange sense of unease mixed with curiosity. He had agreed to this arrangement for financial security, but was it possible that he was starting to care for Eleanor in a way that went beyond the terms of their deal? He wasn't sure, but as he left the gala, walking beside her, he realized that his life was no longer simple. And with each passing day, the lines between business and something more began to blur. Stay tuned as Mark's journey with Eleanor continues. Will their partnership remain purely business, or will the heart be the one to decide the course of their future? Keep watching to find out. The days following the gala seemed to pass in a blur for Mark. Each morning, he woke up to the luxurious surroundings of the penthouse that he now shared with Eleanor, but it all felt so unfamiliar. He had moved into her world, but he couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't really his. Every day, he was reminded of how different their lives were. Eleanor was a powerhouse, running foundations and hosting galas, while Mark was still trying to figure out how to balance law school with his new role as her husband, if only on paper. One afternoon, as he sat in the living room, flipping through legal papers for his next class, Eleanor entered, looking every bit the professional. She wore a navy blue dress that complemented her silver hair, and her presence filled the room in a way that made Mark feel even more like an outsider. She greeted him with a brief smile before getting straight to the point. "I need you to attend a business meeting with me tomorrow," she said, her voice calm and direct. "It's a charity gala we're sponsoring, and I want you to meet some of the major donors." She paused, her eyes scanning him. "This is part of our arrangement, Mark. You'll need to interact with people, show that you're part of this world." She handed him a folder with the event details. Mark took the folder, his fingers brushing hers briefly. He still couldn't get used to the way she handled everything with such ease. It made him feel small, like a bystander in his own life. "Sure," he said, trying to sound confident. "I'll be there." But deep down, he couldn't help but wonder what exactly was happening between them. It felt like he was being pulled deeper into her world, and the more he got involved, the harder it was to keep things strictly business. The following evening, they arrived at the gala. It was the same high-end venue as before, the place full of glistening chandeliers and guests in elaborate gowns and tuxedos. Mark felt more out of place than ever, but he stood tall beside Eleanor, doing his best to blend in. As they entered, several people greeted Eleanor warmly, calling her by name, showering her with compliments about her work. Mark smiled politely, shaking hands with people he barely knew, feeling like a shadow following her every move. After a while, Eleanor turned to him, her expression unreadable. "Mark," she said, her voice slow, "I want to talk to you about something." She gestured to a quiet corner of the room, away from the crowd. They walked away from the crowd, and as they stood near a grand piano, Eleanor spoke again. You've been doing well, adjusting to everything. But I can tell you're holding back. This isn't just a marriage of convenience for me, Mark. She met his gaze. You don't have to keep pretending. Her words hung in the air, and for a moment, Mark wasn't sure how to respond. Was she reading him correctly, or was he just imagining things? He looked at her, wondering if she meant what she said. I'm just doing my part, he said quietly, trying to avoid her piercing gaze. I agreed to this because it was the only way out of the mess I was in. But I don't know if I'm ready for all of this, the public events, the attention. It feels too much. He paused, feeling the weight of the words. I didn't sign up for anything more than what we agreed on. He could see the flicker of understanding in her eyes, but he wasn't sure if she fully realized how complicated this had become for him. Eleanor studied him for a moment, her face softening. Mark, I never expected you to just fit in like it's nothing. I know this is all new to you. But don't think for a second that I'm doing this just to make you uncomfortable. I made this offer because I saw something in you, something real. She paused, her voice becoming quieter. I'm not asking for love, but I'm asking for your honesty. Whatever this is between us, we can handle it together. But only if you let me in. Mark felt a stir of emotion he wasn't prepared for. Her words were sincere, and despite the contract they had signed, there was something more in her eyes that made him pause. Was she really asking for more than just a business arrangement? He had been so focused on surviving, on getting by, that he hadn't stopped to think about what this could really mean. Was there a chance he could find something real here, something that went beyond the financial security and the social events? He exhaled slowly, trying to gather his thoughts. I didn't expect any of this, he admitted. But I think I've been so focused on trying to survive that I didn't stop to ask myself what I really wanted. I'm not sure what this is between us, Eleanor, but maybe, just maybe, we could figure it out together. He reached out and touched her hand lightly, an action that felt both natural and foreign at the same time. Eleanor smiled softly, the tension in her posture easing. I think we can, she said, her voice steady. But only if you stop holding back. We have to trust each other if this is going to work. She gave his hand a reassuring squeeze, and for the first time in a long while, Mark felt like maybe this arrangement was the beginning of something more than he could have ever imagined. As the evening continued, Mark found himself becoming more at ease in Eleanor's presence. He wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time, he could see the possibility of something more between them. As the night ended, he realized that, despite the circumstances, this partnership had the potential to turn into something real. But would it? Only time would tell. Stay tuned to see how Mark and Eleanor navigate their complex relationship. Can they truly build something genuine, or will their business agreement remain just that? Keep watching to find out. The following weeks seemed to pass by quickly for Mark, each day blending into the next. As he continued to accompany Eleanor to events, meetings, and charity galas, he found himself gradually becoming more comfortable in her world. At first, it had all felt foreign, the luxury, the people, the constant attention. But with every passing day, he grew more accustomed to the role he had agreed to play. He was no longer just the law student struggling to make ends meet, he was now part of a world of influence, power, and wealth. Eleanor had proven to be an excellent partner, always guiding him through every step, never asking more than he was willing to give. But something had begun to shift in the air between them. The line between business and something deeper was starting to blur. One evening, after a long day of meetings, Eleanor and Mark found themselves alone in the penthouse. The city lights sparkled outside the window, casting a soft glow over the room. Eleanor had just finished an important phone call, and as she ended the conversation, she turned to Mark, who had been sitting silently by the window, lost in thought. She noticed the change in him. He no longer looked like the uncertain man who had walked into her life weeks ago. There was something different now, a quiet confidence, an ease in his presence that hadn't been there before. You've come a long way, Mark, Eleanor said softly, setting her phone down on the table. You've been handling everything much better than I expected. I knew you were smart, But this, you're starting to fit in with all of this. She gestured to the luxurious surroundings, but Mark could sense there was more behind her words. He turned to face her, his expression thoughtful. I never thought I'd be here, Eleanor. I didn't think I was cut out for this world, he admitted, his voice low. But I've learned a lot. From you. From everything. He paused, searching for the right words. I didn't realize how much of this I wanted until now. It's not just the money or the prestige. It's what comes with it being part of something, of helping others, of making a real impact. He looked at her, his eyes meeting hers. I think you've shown me that. There was a pause, as the weight of his words hung in the air. Eleanor looked at him, a small smile forming on her lips. There was something about the way he spoke, the sincerity in his voice, that caught her off guard. She had always admired his intelligence, his drive, but there was something more now, a deeper connection. She hadn't expected to feel this way. She had assumed their marriage would be strictly a business arrangement, with no room for emotions. But over time, she had started to feel a shift herself. I never wanted this to be just a transaction, Mark, Eleanor said, her voice soft but steady. I thought I could keep everything in control, keep it all separate. But you've made me see that maybe I've been wrong about that. Maybe we can build something real here, together. She took a step closer to him, her voice dropping to a more intimate tone. I didn't expect this. I didn't expect to care so much. But here we are. And I think we owe it to ourselves to figure this out, to see where it leads. Mark was taken aback by her honesty. He had always admired her strength, her ability to navigate the complexities of her life, but in that moment, he saw a vulnerability in her that he hadn't noticed before. It was as if they were no longer two strangers bound by a contract, but two people standing at the edge of something new, something that neither of them had anticipated. He reached out, gently taking her hand in his. I think you're right, he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. We've come this far, and maybe it's time to stop pretending. Maybe it's time to see what this can really be. He paused, his gaze softening as he looked at her. I don't know what the future holds, but I want to find out with you. His words were simple, but they carried more weight than he had realized. Eleanor smiled, her heart fluttering at the sincerity in his voice. For the first time in a long while, she felt a sense of hope. Maybe this wasn't just a business arrangement. Maybe, just maybe, it was the start of something real, something that could change their lives forever. As they stood there, hand in hand, the world outside seemed to disappear. In that moment, it was just the two of them, standing together at the crossroads of something new, something unknown. And for the first time, both Mark and Eleanor realized that their journey together was far from over, it had only just begun. Stay tuned to see what happens next in Mark and Eleanor's story. Will they continue to navigate their complicated relationship? Or will they discover that the bond they share is something deeper than they ever imagined? Keep watching to find out. The following weeks were a whirlwind of change for Mark and Eleanor. Their relationship, which had started as a business arrangement, was slowly transforming into something deeper. They spent more time together, not just attending events but also having quiet dinners, long conversations, and moments of genuine connection. For the first time, Mark began to feel like he truly belonged in Eleanor's world. He was no longer the outsider, the law student struggling to make ends meet, was becoming an integral part of her life. And yet, despite all the progress, there was still something unspoken between them. Something neither of them had fully acknowledged. One evening, after an intense meeting with one of Eleanor's business partners, they found themselves back at the penthouse. The city lights outside the window cast long shadows across the room. Eleanor had been quiet for most of the evening, her mind preoccupied with work, and Mark had spent the night silently observing her, wondering what was going on in her mind. He had noticed how distant she had become over the last few days, and for the first time, he wondered if their connection was truly as deep as he thought. As Eleanor set her briefcase down on the coffee table, Mark couldn't hold back any longer. He stood up, his heart racing as he approached her. Eleanor, he began, his voice hesitant. What's going on? You've been different lately. And I can't help but feel like something is wrong. He waited for her response, his words hanging in the air. Eleanor looked at him, her expression unreadable. She had been lost in her thoughts, consumed by the pressure of her responsibilities, but now, as she looked into Mark's eyes, she felt a rush of emotion. She had been so careful, so controlled with him, not allowing herself to get too close, afraid of what it might mean. She hadn't expected to feel the way she did about him, and it scared her. Scared her more than she wanted to admit. She exhaled deeply and stood up, walking over to the window. It's not that I'm trying to hide something from you, she said quietly, her voice tinged with uncertainty. It's just, this whole situation is complicated. I didn't plan for any of this to happen. I didn't plan to feel anything. This was supposed to be business, Mark. A contract. But I can't ignore the way I feel anymore. She turned to face him, her eyes softening as she took a step closer. Mark's heart skipped a beat as he listened to her. For a moment, he didn't know what to say. He had been feeling the same way, feeling the pull between them that went beyond the contract. He had tried to ignore it, tried to keep things strictly professional, but the more time he spent with Eleanor, the more he realized that he was falling for her. He wasn't sure if she felt the same, but in that moment, he knew he couldn't keep pretending. Eleanor, Mark said, his voice steady but filled with emotion, I know this started as a deal, but I can't deny how I feel about you anymore. I'm not sure where this is going, but I don't want to hide from it. I don't want to hide from you. His words hung in the air, and for a brief moment, Eleanor said nothing. She stood there, her eyes searching his, trying to understand the depth of what he had just said. Finally, Eleanor stepped forward, her hand reaching out to gently touch his arm. I didn't expect this either, Mark, she said softly. I didn't expect to feel this way. But I'm not ready to let go of what we have not yet. I don't know what the future holds, but I want to explore it with you. No contracts, no expectations. Just us. She looked up at him, her gaze vulnerable but determined. Mark's heart swelled at her words. For the first time, he felt a sense of hope that they could build something real together, something beyond the business arrangement they had started with. He nodded slowly, a smile forming on his lips. I don't know what the future holds either, Eleanor. But I want to find out with you. He leaned forward, his lips gently brushing against hers. It wasn't a grand gesture or a declaration of love, but it was enough, a simple kiss that spoke volumes. As they pulled away, Eleanor looked at Mark, a soft smile playing on her lips. This is just the beginning, she whispered. Let's take it one step at a time, together. Mark nodded, his heart full, knowing that whatever came next, they would face it side by side. Stay tuned to see how Mark and Eleanor continue to navigate the complexities of their relationship. Will they find love in the midst of their contract? Or will they discover that sometimes, the best things in life are the ones you never expect? Keep watching to find out. As the weeks went by, Mark and Eleanor's relationship continued to evolve, shifting from a business arrangement to something much more personal. They began to spend more time together, not just at galas or charity events, but in quieter moments, dinners at home, casual walks in the park, and even late-night conversations where they shared things they had never expected to share. For the first time, Mark felt like he was truly part of Eleanor's world, and it no longer felt like an act. It felt real. But as their connection deepened, so did the pressure. The more Mark opened up, the more he found himself questioning the foundation of their relationship. Was this truly love? Or was it just a convenient arrangement dressed up as something deeper? Eleanor, too, struggled with her own feelings. She had never allowed herself to fall for someone like Mark, someone so different from the life she had built. And yet, here she was, unable to ignore the emotions that had slowly crept in. One night, after a particularly long day, they found themselves sitting together in the living room of the penthouse. The soft hum of the city outside filled the silence between them as they sat across from each other. Eleanor had just finished a call with her lawyer, and Mark could see the tension in her shoulders, the exhaustion on her face. He had learned by now to recognize the signs Eleanor was stressed, and that meant she was about to shut down. "Eleanor," Mark said gently, breaking the silence, "what's going on? You've been quiet tonight. More than usual." He studied her closely, his voice filled with concern. "If something's bothering you, you know you can talk to me, right?" There was a soft sincerity in his words, a willingness to listen that made Eleanor pause. She looked at him, her expression softening as she took in his concern. She had always prided herself on being strong, independent, and in control, but lately, she had found herself leaning on Mark in ways she never expected. She had come to rely on him, and now that it felt like they were on the verge of something real, she didn't know how to navigate the feelings that had started to surface. "I'm just overwhelmed," she admitted after a long pause, her voice quiet. "There's so much going on, work, my foundation, everything. It's like I'm carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders, and I feel like I'm losing myself in it." She let out a deep breath, her shoulders sagging as she looked away, staring out the window. "I don't know how to keep pretending that everything is fine, Mark. I thought this would be easier, that I could control it all. But I can't." She glanced back at him, her eyes filled with vulnerability. Mark's heart went out to her. He had seen the strength in her, but in that moment, he saw the cracks, the human side of Eleanor that she so often kept hidden. He reached across the table, taking her hand gently in his. "Eleanor," he said softly, his voice filled with understanding, "you don't have to carry it all alone. I'm here for you. Whatever happens, we can face it together. You don't have to keep pretending with me." He gave her hand a reassuring squeeze, and for the first time in a while, Eleanor allowed herself to lean into his support. She smiled faintly, the tension in her body easing. "I don't know what I'd do without you, Mark," she whispered. "I don't know how I got so lucky to have you in my life." She looked down at their joined hands, her thumb gently brushing against his skin. For a moment, everything felt right. The pressure of her responsibilities, the weight of their arrangement, all faded away as she focused on the person sitting in front of her. She had never allowed herself to rely on anyone, but with Mark, it felt natural. It felt like she could finally let go. Mark smiled, his heart swelling with a mix of emotion. He had come to care for Eleanor in ways he never thought possible, and he was beginning to realize that his feelings for her were no longer about the arrangement. It wasn't just business anymore. It was something deeper, something more meaningful. And he was willing to fight for it. "We'll get through this," he said, his voice steady and full of conviction. "One step at a time." They sat in silence for a while, the city lights outside flickering like stars in the distance. And in that quiet moment, they both knew that no matter what happened next, they would face it together. Stay tuned to see how Mark and Eleanor continue to navigate their growing relationship. Will they find a way to balance their business arrangement with their newfound emotions? Or will the challenges of their world prove to be too much for them to overcome? Keep watching to find out. The days after their quiet conversation passed in a comfortable rhythm. Mark and Eleanor continued to grow closer, their bond strengthening as they navigated the ups and downs of their unique situation. Mark, once unsure of where he stood in Eleanor's world, now felt like he had a true place beside her. But with every passing day, the pressure of their arrangement, one that had started purely as a business deal, began to weigh heavier on them both. Mark was falling in love, and although Eleanor had admitted she cared for him, the thought of crossing the line between business and personal still scared her. One afternoon, as they sat together in the penthouse, Eleanor turned to Mark, her face serious. She had been thinking about their relationship for days, trying to figure out where they stood. She had been so careful to keep her emotions in check, but now, she found herself questioning if the lines between business and love had already blurred beyond repair. The idea of losing control terrified her, yet the pull she felt toward Mark was undeniable. "Mark," she began, her voice calm but with a hint of uncertainty. "We've been living in this strange space between business and something more. I can't help but wonder if this arrangement is really working anymore. We've crossed so many lines that I'm not sure what's real and what's just a product of the contract we signed." She paused, her eyes searching his face for an answer. "What do you think?" Can we keep pretending this is just business? Mark sat quietly, taking in her words. He had known for some time that the nature of their relationship was changing, but hearing Eleanor voice it so directly made him realize how much he, too, was affected by it. He had been falling for her more and more each day, and the idea of going back to a cold, contractual marriage felt impossible. He had to be honest with her. "I don't want to pretend anymore," he said, his voice firm yet gentle. "I know we started this as a business deal, but I can't ignore how I feel about you. I'm not sure where this will lead, but I can't keep living like it's all just a transaction. I care about you, Eleanor. And I think I've known for a while now that this is more than what we agreed to." He paused, searching for the right words. "I don't want to lose you, not like this. But I can't keep living in a lie either." He took a deep breath, letting the weight of his words sink in. Eleanor stood there, frozen for a moment, her heart pounding in her chest. She had never been one to let emotions dictate her actions. She had always kept everything tightly controlled: her business, her life, and yes, even her relationships. But Mark's words were like a crack in the walls she had built around herself. She realized, maybe for the first time, that she wasn't just the powerful woman in control. She was someone who wanted something more, something real, and she had started to see that with Mark. His honesty was both a relief and a challenge. "Mark," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper, "I've been so focused on maintaining control that I didn't stop to think about what I actually want. And somewhere along the way, I stopped seeing you as just part of the deal. You're more. I care about you too, more than I ever expected." She took a step closer to him, her gaze steady. "But I don't know if I can just let go of everything and dive into something I'm not sure I can handle." She looked down at her hands, unsure of how to move forward. Mark reached out, gently lifting her chin so their eyes met. "You don't have to have all the answers right now," he said. "We can take it one step at a time. We don't have to figure it all out in one day. What matters is that we're honest with each other." He smiled, trying to ease the tension in her face. "We can do this, Eleanor. Together." His words were simple, but they carried the weight of everything they had been through. For a long moment, neither of them said anything, the silence hanging between them. But then Eleanor slowly nodded, her lips curling into a tentative smile. I think you're right," she whispered. "We'll take it one step at a time. No more pretending. Let's see where this goes." She reached for his hand, the warmth of her touch sending a wave of comfort through him. In that moment, Mark realized that this wasn't just about a contract anymore. It was about trust, vulnerability, and the possibility of building something real together. They had both stepped into the unknown, but now, they were ready to face whatever came next. No contracts, no pretenses, just them. Stay tuned to see how Mark and Eleanor's relationship continues to unfold. Will they continue to face their challenges, or will their connection grow even stronger? Keep watching to find out. The days that followed their conversation marked a turning point for Mark and Eleanor. No longer were they bound solely by the contract they had signed. Slowly but surely, they were beginning to build something real, something deeper than they had ever expected. They still had their differences, their challenges, but now they faced them together, side by side. The feelings they had kept hidden for so long were now out in the open, and the walls they had both carefully constructed around their hearts began to crumble. One evening, as they sat together on the balcony of their penthouse, watching the sunset over the city, Eleanor turned to Mark. The city was quiet below them, the golden light of the setting sun casting a warm glow over everything. It was one of those rare moments of peace in their hectic lives, a moment where it felt like they were the only two people in the world. "Mark," Eleanor began softly, her voice steady but filled with emotion, "I've been thinking a lot about everything we've been through. About how far we've come, and how much we've changed. I never thought I'd be here, feeling like this. But I want you to know that I'm not just in this for the business anymore. I'm in it for us. I care about you more than I ever expected. More than I thought I could." She looked at him, her eyes filled with sincerity. Mark's heart swelled as he listened to her. He had never imagined that his life would lead him here, to this moment with her. He had started this journey with nothing but a contract and a dream of getting out of debt, but now, he realized that what he had with Eleanor was so much more than that. It was real. It was love. Eleanor, he said, his voice filled with emotion, I've always been afraid of the unknown, but with you, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. I never thought I'd find someone who could understand me the way you do. I care about you, too. And I want to keep building this with you, no matter what. He reached for her hand, holding it tightly in his. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. They simply sat there, their hands intertwined, feeling the weight of their words. The city buzzed below them, but in that moment, it felt like time had stopped. It was as if the world had faded away, leaving just the two of them in a space where anything was possible. After a while, Eleanor spoke again, her voice soft but filled with determination. Mark, I know we've had our challenges. But I believe in us. I believe in what we're building together. This isn't just a business arrangement, Anna Marie, it's something real. Something worth fighting for. She smiled, her gaze steady. And I'm not going anywhere. She leaned in, her lips brushing against his in a gentle kiss. Mark smiled, feeling a sense of peace that he had never known before. He had come to realize that the future wasn't something to be feared, it was something to be embraced. Together, they could face whatever came their way. As they pulled away from the kiss, Mark looked at Eleanor, his heart full. I'm with you, Eleanor, he said, his voice steady and full of resolve. And I'll be here, through everything. For you, for us. The night went on, the two of them sitting together in silence, each lost in their thoughts but also feeling more connected than ever before. They had started this journey with a contract, but now they were building something real, a love that neither of them had expected but both of them had come to cherish. As the weeks passed, Mark and Eleanor's relationship continued to grow. They learned to navigate the complexities of their lives, always finding strength in each other. And as they stood together, hand in hand, they realized that their story was just beginning. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't easy, but it was theirs, real, raw, and full of promise. Stay tuned to see how Mark and Eleanor continue to build their future together. Will their love stand the test of time, or will the challenges of their past tear them apart? Keep watching to find out.